Welcome to Backbone Unlimited. My name is Matt Hartsky. Today will be the next video in a series diving into how to apply as a non-resident for big game in the most prominent Western big game states to the best of my ability. As always, be sure to do your own research. I'm going to have a separate video for Wyoming, Idaho, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, Montana, and Utah, so stay tuned for each of those in the coming weeks. In this episode, we're diving into one of the most misunderstood and most unique draw systems in the West, New Mexico's big game application process for non-residents. If you've ever looked into applying for elk, mule deer, or pronghorn in New Mexico and come away confused about quotas, outfitter pools, or why there are no preference points, you're not alone. New Mexico does things completely differently than most of the other Western states, and understanding how that system works is the difference between applying blindly and applying with purpose. Unlike states that reward loyalty with preference or bonus points, New Mexico resets the clock every single year. It's a true lottery. Everybody starts fresh, no matter if it's your first year or your 15th. But that also means there's opportunity. Every year, brand new hunters draw world-class elk tags in units that would take decades to reach anywhere else. In this episode, we're going to break down everything you need to know for applying for the 2026 New Mexico big game seasons as a non-resident. We're going to walk through how the draw works, what makes the system different, and how to maximize your odds in a state where there's no such thing as point creep. We're going to cover the resident, non-resident quota split, the outfitter pool, required licenses and fees, key deadlines, and practical strategies that help you stay in the game year after year. By the end of this episode, you're going to know exactly how New Mexico's draw works, what pool you belong in, and how to give yourself the best possible shot at landing a coveted elk, mule deer, or antelope tag in 2026. New Mexico is one of the few Western states that still runs a pure lottery draw for its big game licenses. There are no preference points, no bonus points, and no way to improve your odds year after year other than applying consistently and applying smart. Every application starts on a clean slate, which can frustrate longtime hunters, but it's also what makes this state so appealing. Every single year, everybody has a chance. For non-resident, New Mexico divides its available big game tags into 3 pools based on state law. 84% of the tags go to New Mexico residents. 10% go to applicants who apply with a state licensed outfitter, and 6% go to non-residents applying on their own, the DIY hunters. Those percentages apply across species: elk, mule deer, pronghorn, and even oryx and others. For our purposes, we're focusing on the big 3, elk, mule deer, and pronghorn. What that means is if you're applying solo, you're competing for that small 6% slice. But if you apply with an outfitter, you jump into the 10% pool, nearly doubling your potential share of the tags. Now, that doesn't mean it's easy. In high demand units, you're still up against thousands of applicants for a limited number of tags. But in a system with no point creep, the playing field resets every year. That's a huge advantage for newer hunters who don't have decades of points built up in other states. Another defining feature of New Mexico's system is how simple it looks on paper and how easy it is to mess up if you miss the details. There are no bonus calculations or preference point tiers to worry about, but the quota laws, license requirements, and fees trip up a lot of first-time applicants. You have to buy a qualifying license before you can even apply, pay the full tag fee up front, and understand how application choices impact your draw odds. And there are no over-the-counter big game tags for non-residents in New Mexico. If you want to hunt public land here, you have to draw. There are private land authorizations available separately, but they operate outside the draw and usually come at a steep cost. At its core, New Mexico's draw is about luck managed through strategy. You can't build points, but you can build a plan. You can apply for hunts that fit your goals, decide whether the outfitter pool makes sense for you, and apply in a way that maximizes your chances in a state that's still surprisingly open to newcomers. When it comes to the New Mexico draw, timing and preparation are everything. The system is simple on the surface, but it's strict. If you miss even one piece, whether that's your qualifying license, a payment, or the application deadline, you're out for the entire year. So let's start with the big picture, the timeline for 2026. The New Mexico Big Game application period opens in mid-January and closes around March 19th. That deadline applies to all draw species, including elk, deer, and pronghorn. Unlike some states that stagger their deadlines by species, New Mexico does it all in one shot. So if you want to hunt here, put that March 19th deadline in your calendar right now and set a reminder a couple of weeks before it, because once that window closes, it's over until next year. Next is the qualifying license. Every applicant, resident or non-resident, must purchase a game hunting license or a game hunting and fishing license before submitting a draw application. You can't apply without it. For non-residents, that license runs about $65, and you also pay a habitat management and access validation around $4 and a habitat stamp about $10 if you plan to hunt on BLM or Forest Service land, which covers most of the state's public hunts. Now here's where a lot of applicants get caught off guard. New Mexico charges the full tag fee up front when you apply. That means you're going to need the entire amount available on your credit card when you submit. If you don't draw, they'll refund everything except a small non-refundable application fee, usually $13 per species, plus the cost of the qualifying license and stamps. As of the 2025 schedule, which is expected to remain similar for 2026, non-resident license fees run roughly $773 for elk, $368 for deer, and $283 for pronghorn. Those fees are charged immediately at checkout, and refunds typically process a few weeks after draw results post in late April. Your bank statement will show two separate transactions, one for the small non-refundable portions and one for the refunded tag cost if you're unsuccessful. It's also worth noting that your card must remain valid through the draw period. If it expires, declines, or your bank blocks the charge, your application is void, no exceptions. This is one of the most common and painful mistakes a lot of non-residents make. If you're using a debit card, make sure you have enough available balance to cover all species you're applying for. If you're using a credit card, make sure it doesn't expire before May. Here's another key detail. When you apply for New Mexico, you're not selecting one hunt. You're selecting up to 3 choices per species on a single application. The system processes all 3 choices before moving to the next applicant, which means your second and third choices actually matter in New Mexico. You can list 3 different hunt codes, say a high demand Gila bull elk tag first, a solid mid-tier unit second, and a more attainable unit as your third. If tags remain after your first choice, you're going to automatically be considered for your second and third. Finally, after you apply, keep a close eye on your email and your New Mexico Department of Game and Fish online account, because draw results for elk, deer, and pronghorn usually post by April. If you draw, you're going to receive an email confirmation and the tag will be available in your account to print later. If you don't draw, your refunds are automatically processed to the same card you used to apply. The bottom line is this: New Mexico makes you commit up front, but it keeps things fair. No one is guaranteed a tag and no one is left behind because they're new. The key is being organized. Buy your qualifying license early, apply well before the deadline, and double check your card details so your application doesn't get kicked back. Now, once your application is submitted, everything in New Mexico's draw comes down to math, luck, and the quotas. The process runs exactly the same year after year, and understanding how it works behind the scenes is the key to setting realistic expectations and knowing where your odds actually come from. Let's start with the basics. New Mexico uses what's called a random number assignment system. When you apply, the system assigns your application a random number. Think of it like pulling a ticket in a lottery. Then all applicants are ranked from lowest number to highest. The state starts with the lowest random number and begins awarding tags based on each applicant's hunt choices, working its way up until every tag for that species and hunt code is filled. Here's the critical part. New Mexico doesn't just have one big port of tags. They divide it into 3 legally defined pools, right? You've got that 84% of tags going to New Mexico residents. You've got 10% of tags who go to hunters applying through a licensed outfitter, and then you've got 6% of tags going to non-residents applying on their own. Those percentages apply across every species and every hunt code. The state doesn't allocate them separately for elk, deer, or pronghorn. It all follows the same split. And that small 6% pool for the DIY guys is where most hunters enter the game. Now, here's where it gets interesting. When the system starts assigning tags, it checks your first, second, and third choices in order before moving to the next applicant in line. This means your second and third choices can absolutely matter. If your first choice is full, the system immediately checks to see if there are tags left for your second. If that's full, it checks your third. Only after those three are processed does it move on to the next random number. In other words, if you list 3 solid hunt codes instead of 1 dream unit and 2 throwaways, you've just tripled your potential for success. That's a big deal in a system that's purely random. So what happens after your number comes up and tags are being assigned? The system checks which pool you're in. If you applied solo, you're in the non-resident 6% pool. If you applied with the state licensed outfitter, you're in the 10% outfitter pool. Those two pools are completely separate, and once all the tags in a pool are gone, that pool is closed, even if there are still tags left over in another. That means if you're a DIY hunter and your 6% pool fills before your number is drawn, you're out even if outfitter tags are still available. Now on the flip side, if you're booked with an outfitter, your odds might be slightly better simply because that pool has more tags to distribute. Here's a quick example. Let's say a specific elk hunt in Unit 16A has 100 tags available. Roughly 84 of those tags are going to residents, about 10 are going to outfitters, and around 6 to DIY non-residents. Once those 6 DIY tags are assigned, that hunt unit code is closed for the non-resident pool. That's how small the margin is and why understanding the system matters. Another important detail to pay attention to is the group applications. New Mexico allows groups of up to 4 hunters to apply together for most of the big game species. But here's the catch. The system will only award a group if enough tags remain for every member. If your group has 3 hunters and only 2 tags are left, the system skips that application entirely. That can hurt your odds in small non-resident pools, so it's best to apply solo or as a pair maybe, unless you're in a higher volume unit. One thing that makes New Mexico's system fair is how it levels the playing field. There's no such thing as point creep here. Whether you've been applying for 15 years or it's your very first time, your odds are identical. That frustrates some veteran hunters, but it also means that every single year you have a real chance, especially if you're strategic with your hunt choices and pools. Finally, there's the outfitter component. To qualify for the 10% outfitter pool, you must list the outfitter's registration number on your application, and that outfitter must be under contract with you at the time of submission. It's not something you can add later if you don't draw. For some hunters, paying for that guided or semi-guided hunt is worth it for the better odds. For others, the DIY route makes more sense financially. Either way, understanding how the quota split works helps you make an informed choice instead of guessing. Once you understand how New Mexico's draw works, the next step is knowing how to choose your hunts intelligently. Because in this system where everybody starts with the same odds, what you choose and the order you list your hunt codes matters more than anything else. So let's start with elk, since that's where most non-residents focus. New Mexico's elk opportunities are legendary. Units like the Gila, Sacramento, and Northern Ranges produce some of the biggest bulls in the West, and they're all draw only. The key is learning the difference between the hunt types and understanding what those hunt codes actually mean. Each hunt code in New Mexico tells you 4 things: the species, the unit, the weapon type, and the season dates. So when you apply, you can list up to 3 hunt codes per species, and as we mentioned earlier, all 3 of those are going to be considered before the next applicant in line. So how do you pick them? If your goal is simply to hunt elk regularly, focus on mid-tier hunts, areas with moderate success rates, solid public land access, and fewer applicants. Units like 34, 36, 37 and 45 are great examples. They might not produce 380-inch bulls every year, but they consistently hold good elk and offer realistic draw odds even for DIY hunters. If you're chasing a once-in-a-lifetime bull, that's where the Gila hunts 15 and 17 and northern zones like 51, 52, and 53 come into play. Just remember, in a random draw, those premium tags are long shots. There's nothing wrong with applying for one as your first choice, but if you want to keep hunting New Mexico, make sure your second and third choices are attainable. That's how smart applicants turn a 1% chance into a realistic opportunity. Now, your weapon type is another big factor. Archery hunts typically fall in early or mid-September when the rut is kicking in. Rifle hunts usually run in late October or November after the rut ends, and muzzleloader hunts fall somewhere in between. Archery tags often have lower odds of success, but give you that peak rut experience, while rifle hunts have higher success rates but lower draw odds. If you're capable and comfortable with the bow, early archery is often the best way to experience elk hunting in New Mexico, and it can sometimes offer better odds than the rifle seasons in the same unit. Now let's talk about mule deer. New Mexico mule deer are scattered across vastly different landscapes, from desert canyon country in the south to alpine peaks near the Colorado border. The best deer hunting in the state generally comes from the northern and western units like 2B, 2C, and 4, and maybe 5B. These areas produce big bucks every year, but draw odds are low, especially for non-residents. If you're new to applying here, you're going to want to balance one premium unit with one or two that are easier to draw. Units in the southeast and central parts of the state like 32, 33, or 34. They don't get as much attention but can still produce solid bucks with far less competition. A huge advantage for mule deer hunters in New Mexico is flexibility in weapon choice. Because deer hunts are often spread across multiple seasons, you can find draw opportunities for archery, muzzleloader, and rifle, sometimes even overlapping in similar areas. If you're willing to adapt your weapon and timing, you can double or triple your chances of drawing. Now finally, let's talk about pronghorn. New Mexico has a reputation for awesome antelope hunting, and non-residents can do very well here. The wide open grasslands of the eastern plains and central basins produce high densities of pronghorn, and many units have generous tag numbers. Units like 15, 17, 19, and 20 are popular for good reason. They consistently hold mature bucks and have manageable terrain that's ideal for spot and stock hunting. The pronghorn draw works the same as elk and deer. 3 choices per application, all processed before moving on. The difference is that many pronghorn hunts are private land only authorizations, so make sure the hunt codes you choose are valid for public land access unless you already have landowner permission. Always read the fine print and hunt proclamation before applying. It's going to tell you whether the tag applies to public, private, or mixed access ground. If you're a first-time applicant, here's a good formula. First choice should be maybe a dream tag, something you'd drop everything to hunt if lightning strikes. Second choice, a realistic unit with solid odds and good public access. And third choice, a backup tag you'd still be excited to hunt even if it's less famous. That approach keeps you in the game every year without wasting chances, because remember, in a true lottery system, all 3 of your choices matter. By now, you've probably realized that New Mexico's system is one of the most unpredictable in the West. There are no preference points, no guarantees, and no long-term advantage for applying every year, but that's also what makes this state so exciting. It resets the odds every season. If you're a non-resident who knows how to plan, adapt, and apply with intention, you can hunt world-class elk, mule deer, and pronghorn here without waiting a decade. The key is building your strategy around what you can control. Let's start with the most important decisions: outfitter versus DIY. As we talked about earlier, non-residents who apply on their own fall into the 6% pool, while those who apply with a licensed outfitter are placed in the 10% outfitter pool. That's almost double the tag availability, and in many units, it's the only realistic way to draw premium tags. Now, does that mean you need to book a full-service guided hunt? Not necessarily. A lot of outfitters offer guide-only or drop camp type options where they'll handle the licensing paperwork and accompany you for the required number of field days, but you still do most of the hunting yourself. Those arrangements can satisfy the legal outfitter requirement for the draw without the full expense of a luxury hunt. If you're serious about improving your odds and don't mind some structure, partnering with an outfitter can be a smart play. But if you're strictly DIY and prefer total freedom, you can still build a strategy that works. You just have to be more selective with your hunt codes. The best way to do that is by targeting overlooked opportunities. Most applicants chase the same handful of famous units for elk, right? The Northwest for deer and the Central Plains for pronghorn. Those areas produce incredible animals, but they're also flooded with applicants. In a random draw, your best edge comes from low pressure units. Places that don't show up on social media highlight reels but quietly produce solid animals year after year. The trick is to use harvest reports and terrain data together. For example, if a unit has a 25% success rate, moderate public access, and less name recognition, that might be a hidden gem. Even if the draw odds look similar to a better known unit, you're going to face less crowding and probably have a more enjoyable hunt. You should also consider seasonal timing and weapon flexibility. In New Mexico, archery tags often draw a little easier, especially in early September. Muzzleloader hunts sometimes fall in the middle ground between archery and rifle. Still decent odds, but less pressure. If you're versatile with your weapon, you can play the draw like a chess game instead of a slot machine. Another underused strategy is mixing species applications to stay active every year. For instance, while you're chasing a big bull unit for elk in your first choice slot, you could list a realistic deer or pronghorn hunt as your second or third choice. Even though the odds are independent for each species, it keeps you in the system and gives you multiple ways to hunt the state in a given year. If you live in another state in the West and already apply elsewhere, think of New Mexico as your wild card. It's not a state where you plan on drawing every year, but it's one where lightning can definitely strike, and when it does, it's usually worth it. That's why the smartest hunters, when they're planning, use a rotational strategy across states. They build preference points in Wyoming or Colorado while applying in New Mexico annually for the pure chance of a world-class hunt. That way you're always in the mix somewhere. Points building in one place, random odds working in another. Here's one more piece of advice that separates the casual applicants from the strategic ones, right? Watch the return tag process. Every year, New Mexico reissues tags that were surrendered or unpaid before the season. Those leftover or draw return tags don't go through the main lottery. They're posted later in the year and sold first come, first served on the state's website. This window is short and competition is fierce, but if you're ready when they drop, it's another way into the state without waiting for luck to find you. And finally, stay consistent, because in a system like this, consistency is your only edge. You can't build points, but you can build opportunities through time and repetition. Apply every year. Mix your choices between high demand and realistic units. Now that you know how the New Mexico draw works and how to build a smart strategy, let's walk through the actual application process step by step. So when it's time to apply, you know exactly what to expect. The first thing you're going to do is head to the New Mexico Department of Game and Fish website. From the homepage, click Hunting, then Draw Information, and select Apply Now. That link takes you directly to the online licensing system. This is where every big game application happens. If you've applied before, you're going to log in using your CIN number and password. If you're new, you're going to click Create Account. You're going to need to provide your legal name, address, date of birth, phone number, and the last 4 digits of your social. That's required for all applicants, resident or non-resident, so make sure it matches exactly what's on your driver's license. Any mismatch can delay or reject your application. Once your account is set up, you're going to see a dashboard showing your license history, applications, and available options. To start, select Apply for a Draw License. Then choose your species, elk, deer, antelope. Each one requires a separate application and has its own hunt codes, fees, and season structures. Next, you're going to enter your hunt choices. Remember, New Mexico allows up to 3 hunt choices per species. Those are all considered before the system moves on to the next applicant in a random draw. So take your time there. This is where the strategy you built earlier comes into play. Each hunt code tells you your species, your unit number, your weapon type, and your season number. Be absolutely sure your codes match the hunts you researched in the proclamation. Mistakes here are the #1 reason people end up with tags they didn't mean to apply for. Next, the system's going to ask you whether you're applying as an individual or a group. If you're applying with others, you're going to enter your group leader CIN number. New Mexico allows up to 4 hunters per group. But remember, if there aren't enough tags left for everybody in your group, the system skips the whole group. That's why solo or maybe 2-person applicants usually have better odds. The next step is the outfitter declaration. If you're applying in the outfitter pool, the 10% category, this is where you're going to enter your outfitter's registration number. You must already have a contract with them at the time of application. You can't add one later. If you're a DIY applicant, you're just going to skip that section and continue. After that, you're going to need to purchase your mandatory game hunting license and habitat stamp if you don't already have them. These are your annual requirements for all hunters, regardless of whether you draw a tag or not. The game hunting license is typically around $65 for non-residents, and the habitat stamp is going to cost you $10. You must buy both of those before you can submit your application. Now comes the part that catches a lot of new applicants off guard. New Mexico is going to charge you that full license fee up front. That means when you apply, your credit card is charged the total tag cost immediately, which can range from $373 for antelope totals to over $780 for elk, depending on weapon and unit. If you don't draw, you're going to receive a refund for the tag fee, but the state keeps the small processing fee. So before you hit submit, double check that your card has enough available balance, your billing address matches your account, your card won't expire before the draw results are posted in late April. Payment failures are one of the top reasons applicants get voided. Once payment is successful, you're going to get a confirmation number and a receipt email. Make sure you save both. That's your proof of application. I also recommend taking a screenshot of your hunt codes and payment confirmation just in case something goes wrong later. After the deadline closes in mid-March, the waiting game begins. Draw results are typically released by late April, and you're going to receive an email when they're available. You can also log in manually to check your results under the View My Draw results. If you draw a tag, congratulations. Your license is going to automatically appear in your account and you can print it at home or request a mailed copy. If you don't draw, your refund is going to usually post back to your card within a few weeks. It's also important to note that you must report your harvest in New Mexico, even if you didn't hunt by the end of the season. Failure to file your harvest report can disqualify you from future draws, so make that part of your postseason checklist. And finally, if you're applying for multiple species, repeat this same process for each one. Elk, mule deer, and pronghorn are all separate applications. Just remember, each species requires its own set of hunt codes and full payment up front. When you slow down, verify your codes, and double check your payment and license details, this process really becomes fast and predictable. It's not complicated. It just requires focus and attention to detail. And once you've done it once, applying in future years is going to take less than 15 minutes. If you're planning to hunt New Mexico in 2026, timing is everything. Unlike a lot of states that run separate deadlines for each species, New Mexico keeps it simple. All big game draw applications are due the same day. For the 2026 season, you can expect the application deadline to fall in mid-March, typically the second Wednesday of the month. The exact date is going to be announced in January when the new big game proclamation goes live. Every year it's around the same window, but don't take chances. Set your reminders early. Now let's walk through the full application timeline from start to finish, right? In January, the new big game proclamation is published online. This is your playbook. It lists all the hunt codes, units, season dates, tag quotas, weapon types, and updated rules. In mid-January to mid-March, the application period opens. This is your window to apply for elk, deer, and pronghorn, as well as bighorn sheep, ibex, and oryx if you're feeling ambitious. In mid-March, application deadline, right? The system locks at 5 p.m. Mountain Time. There's no grace period, no exceptions, no extensions. Once that deadline passes, you're out until next year. Now, late April, draw results are going to be posted. That's when we get excited and you find out if you drew and when refund processing begins for unsuccessful applicants. In June, the remaining or reissued tags from the draw are posted for sale. First come, first served through the state's online portal. That's the annual rhythm. So learn it once and you're never going to miss a beat. Write all those dates down. As we wrap up this episode on how to apply for big game in New Mexico as a non-resident, let's talk about where most hunters go wrong and how you can avoid these mistakes. Because in a state with no points and pure randomness, it's easy to assume the system is out of your hands. But the truth is, there's a lot of small details that separate the guys who get tagged from the ones who spend years just talking about them. The first mistake is missing the deadline. New Mexico's draw closes in mid-March, and when it does, that's it. There are no late entries, no extensions, no manual overrides. Every year, thousands of hunters remember a day too late. Don't be one of them. Set a reminder in January when the proclamation drops and treat the deadline like a hunt date. The second mistake is using the wrong hunt code. This happens constantly. Maybe you meant to apply for archery elk in Unit 34, but you clicked rifle or typed in the wrong hunt number. Those small errors turn your dream hunt into a missed opportunity, so always triple check your hunt codes against the proclamation before you hit submit. If you're unsure, print your choices and have them in front of you when you apply. The third mistake is not buying the mandatory license first. Remember, you have to purchase that annual game hunting license and habitat stamp before applying. If you try to skip that step, you're not even going to be able to try to apply. So it's a small detail, but it hangs a lot of guys up. The fourth mistake is not having enough available balance on your card. Be prepared for those fees. New Mexico charges full license fees up front, and failed payments automatically void your application. Always make sure your card has enough room on it for the tags you're applying for. They can add up if you're applying for multiple species, right? The fifth mistake is focusing only on trophy units. Everybody wants to hunt the big well-known units, right? But 99% of applicants do that. When you chase those same tags, your odds drop to nearly zero. Instead, mix in realistic units where the draw odds are better and the pressure is lighter. The smartest hunters here don't just apply for glory tags, they apply to actually hunt. The sixth mistake is ignoring the outfitter option. Even if you're a DIY hunter, working with a licensed outfitter for the draw can double your odds in certain units. You don't need a full guided hunt. Even partial or guide-only arrangements qualify you for the 10% outfitter pool. For serious applicants, that small adjustment can make a big difference. The seventh mistake is not reading the proclamation carefully. Every year, New Mexico updates weapon restrictions, season updates, and unit boundaries, so don't just assume last year's rules still apply. The state posts the proclamation in January for a reason. It's the rule book, and skipping is like going into a hunt without looking at your map. If you're serious about taking this kind of knowledge deeper, that's exactly why I built Team Backbone. It's more than just a membership. It's a way to sharpen your edge with exclusive tools, strategies, and a tribe of hunters who refuse to quit. Inside, you're going to get 20% off site-wide on all Backbone Unlimited gear, a member-only t-shirt shipped to your door every month, not available anywhere else, full access to the digital content vault of guides, checklists, fitness programming, backcountry strategies, and mindset training, a private Facebook group with direct access to me, and a community of driven hunters who live relentless, direct call, text, or email access to me for personalized advice on training, hunting strategy, or just sharpening your edge, and automatic entry into monthly gear giveaways. This is built for the guys who train for the hunt, push themselves in the off-season, and want to be part of a tribe that makes them better. If you're ready for that kind of inner circle, then Team Backbone is waiting for you at backboneunlimited.com underneath our membership tab. Thanks for being here. Until next time, train harder, hunt smarter, and never settle.